I started getting a taste that, oh man, I can earn a lot of money. And what really made me is not just about money, but during this time when I was interacting with people.
So we got another episode of the One Podcast here with Sri from Quris 8. He's a serial entrepreneur, a tech guy, somebody who's been in the industry, involved in B2B, fintech, a lot of different kind of individual spaces for a while now. I think it's going to be an interesting pod, and he's super engaged in the founder community as far as just getting involved with early stage companies as well. So I don't know if you want to just give a quick sort of 30-second background to yourself, to the early stage entrepreneur audience, and then we can kind of dive in more detail.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity for inviting me today, and super excited to talk to founders. So let me give a backstory of how I got into entrepreneurship, and I would call it serendipity. This all started when I was 16 years. I had a fight with my dad, and he's like, you have to earn your own money. He wouldn't pay for my college and other things. And what that started me to do is I started looking at folks during those times. This was year 98, people who were
Okay.
making and building computers. And I started building computers and started coding at a pretty young age. And that started making me money for me. So people required me to build computers, and there was this colleges that I used to go assemble computers there. And that's how I started getting a taste that, oh man, I can earn a lot of money. And by the time I turned 20, I had like
Nice.
close to $20,000 in my bank.
Okay.
um, and what really made me is not just about money, but during this time when I was interacting with people, I felt so happy that I'm solving some of their problems. It could be coding, it could be building computers. But yeah, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense for me to start doing more, because that's how I'm able to get more closer to the customers, or you say users, and also make money out of it. That's the first start in my career to get into it. And then I did my MBA, and post my MBA, like everybody else, I was topper of my college. I got an offer from the campus, but interestingly, again, I didn't go to a job. Again, I met a founder who was really solving the problem of building a technology platform for advertisers in the US. This was 2002 and 2003,
Mm.
pretty early back. Uh,
Okay.
People were looking at an online platform. So that's how we built a technology platform during those days, pretty early on, in the US. And I would also say that was very early experience for me to launch a business from India in the US, when the ecosystem was not even developed. So it was super tough, super interesting journey of
Gotcha.
sitting in India, going to the US, targeting advertisers, targeting your customers, and doing that. That's, I think, the first experience for me, launching a global business pretty early on. Uh, and from there, I worked across another 4 or 5 startups, which included one of the largest fintech called Paytm. So I've
Paytm.
seen both 0 to 1 journey, and also 1 to 100 million journey of revenues of both those challenges, early stage and matured stage. Yeah, I think it's been pretty last 20 years, leading teams almost close to $200 million in revenue, from 0 to $200 million in revenue. And I'm very fortunate, grateful for the experience.
Cool. So I guess I think that kind of, I was going to ask you, like what inspired you to become an entrepreneur, but I think that story is like pretty classic and will resonate with a lot of people as far as with your dad and whatnot and 20 grand.
Yeah.
So I guess to get into Paytm a little bit. What was so? Did you have like an interest in like fintech or SaaS, or how did that kind of, was that just kind of the niche at the time that was sort of booming or blowing up with the post.com, or what was kind of the impetus for that?
Yeah, good question, Chris. So I think it's a pretty interesting phase in India, because most of 18 years I was in India. Uh, Paytm was erstwhile called 197 Communications. So it was a telecom software company on cloud, but had close to 400 million users that it was touching through its platform. And one of the big problem during those times was a lot of people used to use cash to transact on a day-to-day basis. and cash was becoming a problem because the government of India demonetized the currency, saying most of the cash should move into digital currency. And during those times, payments was always a problem because there were no cards, there were no platforms, but everybody had a mobile phone on their hand. And one of the initiative our founder really thought was, if we can build payments into a phone where people could just scan a QR code and make a payment, it would basically create a huge amount of financial inclusion during that time. So that's the mission that really motivated me to get into Paytm, and which obviously became a very large fintech today, solving really payments for people who do not have digital payments but have a mobile phone. Um, and then the company really scaled. I joined at a pretty early stage when the company was 300 people strong,
Mm.
primarily solving for online bill payments, and then transitioning it into banking, digital banking, credit cards, loans, and lending. And one of my role was primarily to build the commerce business around payments, because people use commerce on a day-to-day basis. When I say commerce, this is e-commerce, purchasing goods, or it could be buying digital vouchers. And that business scaled to become almost $1 billion during my time, uh, touching more than, I think, 100 million people who would kind of use that platform. So I went through the interesting challenges of building this company, raising capital from Alibaba, SoftBank, pretty large investors, and also building a very large scale product used by millions of people was a very, very interesting learning for me at Paytm. And because we provided almost like a platform for 20 million sellers and close to 100 million shoppers on the commerce platform. Um, and today, if I look at Paytm, from where I started off, and in my last assignment with Paytm was primarily building a fraud detection platform for fintechs across the world. So, because Paytm has grown to almost become a $20 billion company, what we've kind of built is amazing amount of technology in Paytm, which we thought could be used by other enterprises across the world. And one of my role was to take Paytm SaaS platform globally by launching it in the US and Canada as well as Japan, where I was responsible to uh, launch the fraud detection SaaS platform targeting mid enterprises and large enterprises.
Okay.
And that business became almost a $20 million ARR business.
How are you dealing with like kind of the sales or the outbound infrastructure for a company like that?
It had primarily, Chris, two target segments. One is large enterprises and one is mid-level enterprises. And obviously, the outbound infrastructure was slightly different for both, because one is high touch and one is, I would say,
Low touch.
low touch or a medium touch. For high touch enterprises, it was primarily direct sales through events, relationships, and partnerships that we would crack in the US. So it's a different journey altogether. So outbound was primarily more of reaching out to C-level execs, decision makers, and primarily VP of risk and fraud, directly to kind of talk to them. And it would take maybe 3 to 6 months to convert a particular qualified lead into a sale. That was that process. But for mid-market enterprises, we've primarily used outbound calling. So we figured out our ICP is primarily fintechs, community banks, and we used AEs, SDR, BDR infrastructure internally to call to those qualified leads, and started moving them from the top funnel and then mid funnel and bottom funnel through a demo process, and then converting that demo into a sale. And we've created a very rigorous methodology, I would say, in terms of how do we run these meetings, how do we run these calls super effectively. And we never used to just restrict ourselves to only one decision maker in the funnel. Sometimes we
Multiple
would do like,
personas.
yeah, it's like personas, right? So you would parallelly talk to a CEO but also start talking to your vice president, who is the user, or even a risk analyst who's actually using the product. So it's a mixture of both high touch and low touch infrastructures that we've used.
Gotcha. Um, cool. So, I guess can you break down like the some of the direct to consumer stuff that you've done? Because I know that you had like a pretty solid involvement there as well.
Yeah. So my experience of B2C was with my startup called Gifting Nation and Hobby Toys. And obviously even Paytm e-commerce was also in a way B2B and both B2C. With Gifting Nation, one of the experience was we've launched a direct-to-consumer business primarily targeting comic fans and diecast car enthusiasts. So talk about Marvel, Comic Cons. So all the merchandise that you see in Comic Cons, we said that why don't we create like an online platform for all these Comic Con fans? And we
Nice.
started the business with Shopify as a platform. Like people, but this was like early 2010. We used
Okay.
Shopify, but we also had a market strategy to go to marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart.
Hmm.
Um, so we had some very exclusive merchandise on Shopify, which is our own platform, but a large scale common merchandise on Amazon and Walmart. Those are the two channels. And the entire marketing strategy was primarily to give a great experience for users in terms of content, community. So we had a very close community of 250,000 users that we've created, all these comic fans. And any new updates that would start coming in, we wouldn't spend even money to sell a product. The community would sell itself. So if it's a new product, it's pre-ordered, we post it on the community and people start buying it. So I would say it's a great learning for us. Over 5 years we built a very strong fans or community of users through
Got it.
that experience.
So sort of sort of just work in the community building
Yeah,
angle.
yeah.
And how long were you doing that startup for, and kind of where did it go?
Close to 5 years from where we started off, and one of the big learning is when we started off, we started getting our first 100 orders within 15 days. So we didn't wait, we went live with 10 products. So it started off like
Revenue right away.
100 orders a day. And when we sold the startup, honestly, we sold the startup successfully in year 5. We were
Nice.
at $4 million ARR revenue when we sold it off. We were highly valued because of our users, because our CAC was
Whole
super
community.
low.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could pull a community. So it was like huge, loyal fan base that we had.
Cool. So, and then I guess were you doing that like that? I guess what was your career transition after exiting that company? Were you thinking immediately about starting another company, or kind of how to, that's kind of the transition element there, I think is the thing a lot of people deal with.
Yeah. I think this is always I would say, a stage where every founder gets into, that you're a builder and you like building things. Immediately after the startup, I thought of, yeah, maybe I'll take a small retirement, take some money out and, just chill out. But
But
I
then you're like,
realized
no
that
way.
after 1 month, there is this itching that, hey, let's go on to the next big problem. And the next big problem that I really got into was, it's a job. But when I joined Paytm, one of my biggest challenge, the founder told me was, Srini, you built a
Sure.
business of e-commerce, but we are building like $1 billion e-commerce business. So, why don't you come in and, grow this business, almost 2x of what it is today.
Nice.
So I think when you're a builder, it's always like you want to do build things rather than sit and do that. So I've got again into like an entrepreneurship mode with Paytm as an opportunity.
Cool. And it was sort of, I guess you're looking at it also as a way to like increase your sort of diversity of like industry exposure, and just have an opportunity to have
I
like an
think
even bigger
scale, Chris.
impact.
I would definitely say scale. And one of the things that I've learned as a founder, building startups early on, was at each stage, you start looking at different scale of business, and each scale of business brings you interesting challenges of growth, interesting challenges of product, hiring people and teams. At Paytm, what I really got pulled in into is, like you definitely said, the diversity and also the scale at which the company was operating at. Like imagine Paytm had 300 million users, and when you're building a platform for 300 million users, the scale is massively different. And I think that got pulled me into it, that I never saw that massive scale in my experience, and that's what got me pulled into Paytm.
Got it. So I guess how did Paytm, what ended up happening there, and what was your kind of next move after Paytm?
I think after the e-commerce business grew to $1 billion, we our challenge was to convert it into a profitable company. So per order basis, we kind of turned it around and made it profitable. Post that, I moved to Toronto, Canada. It was an interesting move from me, where Paytm had this ambition of, taking the software global now from India to global. And one of the
Got it.
first software that we picked up is the SaaS platform, which I mentioned earlier, which is the fraud detection platform. And my role was primarily to commercialize the fraud detection SaaS platform in the US and Japan, both these countries. Now, why Japan is Paytm had invested in a company called PayPay, which today is one of the largest payments company in Japan, fintech company. So this fraud detection platform was almost like zero for us in Canada here and US, and that became a $20 million business in the last 3 years. From 2020 to 2023 till the time I was there with Paytm, the business grew almost like 3x of where it is today. I would say that that's a very new and a big initiative for Paytm, which was primarily a payments company for the first time moving into a SaaS kind of model with its software.
Sure. Sure. So I guess after that experience, are you like more interested in exploring or solving problems in the SaaS ecosystem as opposed to ecom or
Yeah,
direct?
I think I had two choices, Chris. I think one of the choice was again build an e-commerce company, D2C
Another
kind
one.
of model and go for it. But what I started realizing is there are tons of founders, a lot of founders in the US and India who were primarily struggling around the product market fit stage. Um, I don't want to use the word struggling, but think of it, the
Sort of stuck.
time taken from a founder, to cross product market fit, go to market fit, and reach 1 million, and then 1 million to 10 million. I have seen, the odds of success primarily, as very few, 10%, 20% startups make it. And one of my mission was, I personally went through those battles myself. And if I could build a platform or a community of sorts which could help early stage founders, especially in the B2B SaaS space, accelerate the path to product market fit with using a very rigorous methodology, and from product market fit to hit your first million, and then from a million to $10 million, I would say it's a huge value add. And that's what motivated me, that to give more at this stage rather than continue to do it in a way. I'm actually building with the founders, and I thought that's a deep mission that I wanted to kind of personally take into as a commitment.
Sure. So I guess leading that into, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about like how that leads into what you're doing now, the
I
new
think
company?
with that mission, I've started Quris 8. And Quris 8's primarily mission is to help the B2B technology startup founders basically solve their go-to-market and product market fit challenges in three ways. One is pretty much when you start a company, you're trying to figure out your MVP and trying to get to your first $1 million. So what Curie said today, what the company does is primarily take you, hold you through that process, run through the methodology, which I call it founder-led sales stage, uh,
Hmm.
creating a very rigorous methodology of go-to-market and sales execution, which includes pretty much finding your design partners, how to find your design partners, the right design partners who do POCs with you, and converting those design partners into early adopters who would start paying money for your product, and converting that into, I would call, a repeatable, recurring go-to-market motion, is what my company does today. And we don't focus on late stage. We primarily focus on $0 to $10 million kind of revenue scale. And I would say 0 to 3 million, I would call product market fit finding stage, which we
Got it.
focus on. And the second stage is the go to market fit stage that we
Okay.
focus on.
So I have, I obviously, I think we discussed previously, I had a marketing agency. Almost all of my kind of clients were in this sort of ecosystem or
Yeah.
stage. So let's say you have a SaaS company that's in a decent niche. They've got a great team, right? Some smart engineers, some people who are connected in the industry, and they're struggling with that product market fit. Maybe they're at like $1 million and ARR or something like that, and they're sort of they're stuck in that kind of phase that you are alluding to.
Mhm.
Like, what are some of the things that you would do or look at to try to kind of advance them or move them to the next stage without taking in a ton of capital?
I think if the company is already at $1 million, I would still not say they've really found their product market fit or really cracked go to market.
Right.
I would definitely guide them on two things. One is expanding whatever they're focusing on, target user group, which is the ICP, trying to really flesh out those unmet needs. So there are needs that they would
Mm,
have verified over the 1 million period, and make sure those clients are really sticky and not churn out. Sometimes you get these early signals that the customer is super happy, will pay you money just because of your relationship or something like that, but they
sure.
never move out. Uh, Try to make that a little more
They're not
smoother.
long term.
Yeah, not long term. And two, so that becomes like a pretty much an early ICP messaging need kind of value fit mapping that becomes more stronger. That's what I would do. Two is really design a go to market model. So if I were a founder, if I was to help them, I would really look at designing a right go to market model. And the right go to market model involves primarily what kind of ACVs are you looking at, what kind of target market are you looking at, are you looking at an SMB market, are you looking at a mid market, are you looking at enterprise market, and then within those, how effective is your product to self serve, or does it need little support of, I don't know, onboarding and all of those to kind of
Got
do
it.
that. So try to create this go to market model, and then make it a little more accelerating is what I would do. These are the two things: ICP, making sure you solidify those messaging around those, get your early cycle going, and then build a very strong go to market model to scale it up.
Got it. So your approach is also looking at the product branding,
Correct.
product strategy,
Yes.
and how
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
plays into the overall sales or GTM kind of picture.
And many a times, Chris, I think just to add one more important point is even the product marketing, I would call messaging, right? If your message is not compelling enough, maybe you have a really kick-ass product, but if you're not able to communicate the right messaging to the
Copy.
users, they might not even resonate with it. So you make it so complicated that people won't even understand what your product is.
Do you find that to be a common problem? I guess for these founders that are like stuck in the PMF kind of stage, is do you find it to be like a copy or just a messaging problem? Like is that often? Because in my experience, I guess I often find that those messaging problems are also tied to product problems. You know what
Product
I'm saying, or
problems. Yes.
or some
Yeah.
issue with
Yeah.
the audience. But have you read into cases where it's just like, wow, this messaging just is not connecting?
Yeah, I've seen both the cases. So I'll give you our own example. So when we took the Paytm fraud product, and even some of the products that I've seen, AI products now, which many founders are launching, they
Sure.
would talk about things like AI features, things like centralization, integrations, and all of those, but little less on what's the outcome, what does it do. So let's say, will your product reduce fraud from 60% to, I don't know, 80% to 60%, or 80% to
Sure.
20%. They won't come out that clearly. But what you talk about is very nice fancy language jargons of technology terms, and doesn't talk about what the product is intended to do in terms of need and user. So that's one problem. Second, when you said, Chris, about product problems, yes, I think founders come with immense amount of passion that my product is great, I've tested it out. But when you actually start putting it out in front of the users, and when users start really thinking it from their workflow point of view, I've seen
Hmm.
products failing, and it becomes very complicated for users to use the product. So
Got it.
these are a few examples that I've seen both on messaging side as well as product problem side.
Interesting. Um, what? So after you help them, or theoretically, right, they correct this kind of messaging or product market fit sort of audience problem. What are there other things like the team culture, who's on the team, the type of technology they're using, like what are there some other things that come into play that might also be factors in this growth stage
I
that you
think
found?
there are four critical, there are four key pillars, Chris. I think, and you kind of already mentioned it out. I think the first I would say is definitely the team. Team, I would say, is as a top of the pyramid of things. Like team, you have to have a really good team. And when I say team, obviously the founding team initially is just the founder and one or two others who kind of do
Co-founders.
that,
Yeah.
at least at the initial stages. Uh, Two, I would still go back to the same problem of obsession for customers, obsession of customer problems, even before the product. Like have you really understood, is it a real problem? Did you validate it? Is it a fake problem? Or is it something that, an assumption that you've created? And many a times founders falter there is your assumption, you think that it's right, but it's never a real problem. So validating, obsession about customer problem, I would say, is the second big thing. Even before you come into technology and what product you build, is the second key thing. uh, Third is, making the product simpler, as simple as possible. um, and that's where, this is a problem many founders do, is they create these fancy roadmaps or huge roadmaps and say that, I want to build 10 features into it. And I would say that just focus on one or two things that would solve at least many problems that customers continuously face, that you can replicate in, is a third big thing. Making your product simpler and simpler. And fourth is speed and momentum. Early founders do not have the luxury of time, so
Right.
speed and momentum is a very, very important thing. Velocity, I would say, is a super, super important thing for you to do. At least at the PMF stage, I would say these four are superly important. uh, and when I say product comes with messaging, product comes with your ICP, and all of those are part of the product, is what I'm kind of putting in.
Got it. Um, what I guess from the founders that you've talked to, what are some of from their perspective? How do they sort of perceive this problem? Are they just thinking like, "Hey, we're stuck," or do they have an accurate perception that there's like a product market fit um, issue that's constraining their growth? Like, is it something that they're oblivious to or they're aware of?
No, I think founders are aware. I won't say founders are not aware. At least I would say many founders know that there is a problem when it comes to understanding customers or customer needs. But what I've seen, Chris, is at what rate, at what pace are you experimenting, iterating, and validating them in the market, is definitely founders are looking for help. Like, is this problem exists with 100 customers? Does this problem exist with 200 customers? Now I need to validate that as a voice. Maybe I won't get that early signals that easily. So founders know it's a problem, but they want to really validate it at large scale, before they get to a stage. I think that that's what is coming out, at least with founders that I've spoken to. Um, yeah.
Got it. So I guess shifting gears a little bit just to the company you're trying to build. So do you have you I guess doing like a consulting company or a services company is like a little bit new to you. Is that something that you're how do you feel about, I guess, building a company like this? Is it something where you're looking to like build it into an agency where you're really working with a ton of companies, or just like really looking to get involved with a few key early stage founders? How are you looking at your company?
Whenever, yeah. So funny thing is, I always used to envy or hate consulting companies, because consulting companies give fancy PPTs and strategies,
Right. A little deck.
and little less of action.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and being a founder myself, who've been in the trenches, I think the whole philosophy of this company is basically, you're a doer, you are hands on in action. And my commitment was, we will never do these fancy PPTs for 2 hours doing brainstorming sessions and give it to founders, but rather pick up a problem, work pretty hands on with the founder, and run a methodology. Because what I've
Yeah.
seen, Chris, is you need a very rigorous science and methodology to run a process, plus hands on. So these are the only two things that I bring in from an agency perspective. Is being a founder, we went through those trenches, we went through those battle scars and all of that. So I'm not going to inculcate the
Yeah.
culture of, hey, let's sit and do a 2 hour brainstorming to come with an idea. No, get out in
Yeah.
the market, talk to 100 customers,
Yeah.
revalidate it, validate it, learn, and start building a product. So
Yeah.
velocity, customer obsession, methodology is what we kind of bring in. I would say is a big difference in this agency or consulting practice that I'm kind of building in.
Got it. Yeah. I'm just thinking back. Like with my agency, we were at like kind of low 7-figure point, and
Yeah.
trying to like scale past that. And I had like a consultant guy come into the office to like talk to my sales team. Okay. And he comes in, he's got like the fancy watch, the shoes. And I'm like, this guy's gonna, and with the deck, right? Like explaining the
Yeah.
things he's gonna do. I'm like, this price is gonna be crazy. You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
not against a consultant, and don't take me wrong, I'm not against a consultant, but I think at the early stage, what I went through as a founder is you need somebody who has gone through that journey
Yeah.
and who is more hands on. Like, hey, there is an
Right.
outcome, there is a result that would start coming in is more important than saying, yeah, please take this template and implement it and
I
you'll
think
come.
that's got to be the key piece. Yeah, the
Yeah,
hands on, because it's like I find that the people it's 100% value to have somebody who has been through it before, right? Who's
yeah,
involved. You know what I'm saying? You can't
right.
always hire that person. So that's kind of
Yeah,
where the consultancy comes in. Where it gets bad is where if they're just handing off a template or like doing like a 1 hour coaching thing, right? And that
yeah,
they're not like they don't have their hands in it. Like, can they really make an impact? No, because it's like dependent on you
yeah.
absorbing the information, which is not going to happen because you don't have the time or the you kind of get that, or do you sort of see it the same way?
No, absolutely, Chris, I think founders are super passionate people. They have passion on their idea, they have passion on their product. They're too closed. When it comes to like think of it like a baby, right? A startup is a baby for them, and you're kind of growing that baby, so they're so emotional and attached to it. And
Yeah,
what happens is it's really important to increase those odds of success. And I always believe the odds of success would only increase when you do things, do experiment, iterate, talk to customers, be in the field, and then only you'll learn it. um, yeah, I think sometimes consulting helps, sometimes ppts help, that's good. But each context is different, each market is different, each founder is different. So one template won't apply to every single startup, every single founder, every single context. uh, that's my view.
got it. Um, any closing things or pulling things together? I guess what are your main takeaways from your long career as far as like startup founders? What are there any critical factors in their success that you've kind of observed or postulated about?
Yeah, I think I would kind of consolidate them into three. I think one is a very strong foundation of a mission. I know people might laugh at me saying, "Why are you talking about mission when you say startup?" But I always believe if you do not have a very strong foundation of a mission, your startup will always be temporary in nature because it's not rooting from a very strong foundation. All my years, I've seen having a mission pretty upfront will give you a reality check on what you're trying to build, and are you building it really for the sake of it, or are you really creating it for value.
Got it.
um, Two is impact. Create a startup for impact. It should generate some amount of impact economically, for your
Okay.
users, for your market, for your business, I would say, is the second thing. Third is make money, man. You're not creating a startup for
Charity
a
reasons.
free ride.
Yeah.
And the best part is I've seen that founders think that, hey, I've raised $10 million, so I've achieved a lot. No, man. I think for me, success is free cash flow. Any business which generates FCF, free cash flow, is an amazing amount of business. So mission, impact, and generating it for free cash flow, I would say, should be my three key things. Personally from my side, that I've seen successful founders kind of look at or have experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what type of companies are you looking to kind of work with if somebody's interested in reaching out to you or working with you? Like what type of company would that be, and how do they get in touch with you?
We are primarily a good fit for companies who have some MVP in place, not an idea, but some tangible product that users can use.
Got it.
um, have raised some amount of funding,
Okay.
and definitely looking to accelerate product market fit, or trying to, like you said, Chris, maybe they're at a million and trying to grow from a million to $5 million from a go-to-market perspective. Have founder as a salesperson, or maybe has an early sales team, I would say is a good fit for Quris 8.
Perfect. And yeah, where can people follow you, keep up with what you're doing?
We have a LinkedIn page, but they can email me on Srini, Srini at quris8.com. Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of do it. And we have a LinkedIn page,
Okay.
people can go in and contact us.
Yeah, and we'll link Shree's information, guys, in the description, as well as with the new company, and maybe do some type of webinar, some specific topic for maybe one of the SaaS initiatives in the
Would
future.
love to.
But thanks for coming on, Shree, and this is the One Podcast.
Thank you, Chris.
Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Now I'm basically starting a new company, which is going to be an app market.